Hello and welcome to this month's Scriptcase video. My name is Jamie Oates and I am your host today. In this month's video we will be talking about how to work with libraries within Scriptcase. Now you may be wondering what are libraries and whether there are libraries within Scriptcase, what their purpose are and so forth. So yes, there are libraries within Scriptcase. And as I said, what are libraries? But that is of course an important topic, and if you actually ask Google or go ahead and check online what the definition of a library is, well then you will find that a library is a place where you can read materials, or a place where you can read such materials such as books or magazines or whatever, just anything that is a material that you can actually read and learn from and that are systematically arranged. Or it could also be a room for such a collection. So in tech terms, a library would be pretty much the same thing. And a library within Scriptcase is split into an internal library as well as an external library. And in both of these, we can basically place our so-called books and copy paste them, or even reuse them, or cut pages from one and reuse pages in another, and so forth. And this is pretty much what you could do then within a library. Of course, you wouldn't want to go there and start destroying the books, but in that case, it is what you are able to do with internal libraries and external libraries within Scriptcase. So the difference between an internal library as well as an external library is that the internal library is inside of the application, and the external library is actually outside of the application. Now it may not make much sense, but then when we actually look at something like this, so then we have our internal library which is then inside our application, and then we also have our external library, which is then outside of our application, but still of course within Scriptcase. So we develop our internal libraries within the application itself. So when you generate a form or a grid, you can create internal libraries. You can create external libraries on your own machine, on your desktop, on your laptop, or even on your phone today, and you could then upload those into Scriptcase and then use those scripts. Now there is a bit of a difference other than that between the two, because with internal libraries you can also use you can basically, as I'm saying here, with internal libraries you can develop within files and paste into Scriptcase, but then with external libraries you develop within files and you upload them into Scriptcase. So with the files, you do use the Scriptcase inbuilt file manager, and then you can actually upload your own JavaScript files, HTML files, CSS style sheets, or even PHP files, and then use them within your Scriptcase project. Now, you can use external libraries within internal libraries. So that is an important note, okay? So you can mix and match, so to say. But it's also important to note that you can use macros within internal libraries, but you can't within external libraries. Now you can add libraries to all applications at one go if you wanted to. You can do that at the beginning of development or at the end of development, during the application cycle, whenever it is. So that is before, during, or even after. You are able to simply add a library to an application or add an external library to all of Scriptcase, all of your applications. So Scriptcase also comes preloaded with some libraries, and those libraries then that we already have within Scriptcase would then be the TCPDF, which then creates the PDF documents, or the FPDF HTML, Excel as well, so you can create Excel documents. So the majority of these are then used for the export, and you can then also use these throughout your application cycle or development if you wanted to. So they are already there, you don't need to go ahead and add them yourselves. So we have quite a few there, including Fusion Charts, JSMind, JKanban, and more. Okay, so for the macros, I had mentioned that we have macros, and it is important that we talk about these macros because the macros allow us to use these libraries within Scriptcase. So whether that be an internal library or an external library. For instance, we could create an internal library and then use it only at specific points within the life cycle of the form or within the process of the form. And then at those points, you would then want to go ahead include your library so that a specific function or feature occurs or happens within your application, and that is then very easily to achieve by the use of macros and then with your libraries. So for the macros, we have sc_include_lib, sc_include_library, as well as sc_url_library. So we will come into these further on as we start developing within Scriptcase. So I will show you how to use each one of these, and we will also use each of the libraries. So we will create an internal library as well as an external library, and we will also go ahead and mix and match the two together so that we can use an external library within an internal library and so forth. Okay, so why would you want to use libraries? Of course, that is an important question because you may not want to have the extra work. But by using libraries, you will actually be reducing the amount of work that you have. For instance, think of the copy-paste factor. Instead of copy and pasting into 10 files, you are doing it into one file. Or in general, instead of coding in one application, you are coding only in one application instead of many, which is also the case in many situations. For instance, when you've developed your 30, 40, 100 applications or more within Scriptcase, which is quite easy to achieve, that you have your 200-300 applications, it is very tiresome and cumbersome and of course costs a great deal of money to start developing individual applications within your own apps. Instead, you can develop those extra functionalities or applications within individual script files, upload them as an external library, and then import them into the relevant apps where you want to use them, and off you go. Your libraries will then be fully functional, where then again you only code in one file or one application, or however it is depending on the scenario that you are actually in. Okay, so let's jump into Scriptcase and see how all of this works, and then we can actually check out each of these macros that we have available, as well as the internal and external libraries, and see how we can actually work with these within the Scriptcase environment. Okay, so now that we are logged into Scriptcase, so you have your standard interface, you'll have your create project option, which is what we're going to go ahead and do. We're going to create a new project. And with that, we're going to start with a blank project, and I'm just going to call this how to work with libs. Okay, so how to work with libraries basically, and I'm just going to go next. And for the database, what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the samples database, which is the database available with the demo application here. So if you don't know how to create that, do check out the videos for that. And otherwise, when you start off, just create, instead of choosing a blank project, choose to create the samples project, and that will then give you this database that I'm using here. And I will generally use this all the time within the webinars and so forth. So there, once we have chosen our connection, we can test the connection, and then we can go ahead and click the next button. Okay, so I'm going to leave it as an English language and just go next, and well, leave it also as the blueberry and click create. Now you may be noticing at the bottom here that I have the Bootstrap version 4.0.0 distro downloaded here in a zip file, and that is because I have just gone and downloaded that so that I can actually upload that in a few moments within an external library. So that is an important note. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that now. So I will go ahead and check that within my downloads and upload that shortly. And of course, we are going to check where we do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is something really simple. I'm just going to create a basic grid, and for that I will choose here, let's say, the customers table. It's quite a complex table. I don't really want all this information here. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to, well, let's expand our edit window here, because we can really play and edit our SQL queries here if we want to. So I'm just going to remove some of the basic information that I'm not really interested in within this form. The city, do we want to keep the city? Well, let's remove notes, country, and let's keep the country. And customer ID, customer name, customer title, birth date, and country. So I'm going to leave those selected fields there, and I will also choose here to create a form for me automatically. So if I leave this button, this option here checked, then it will now also create here the form customers for me, and I will go ahead and leave that and then click here the create button. So it's now going to go ahead and create the grid as well as the form for me. Only the grid here is opened, and that is now is also generating the source code, so that all of the applications are, well, the two applications I just created are available for me to view, and it's going to go ahead and run them then also. Okay, so they've been generated, and I can run the application now, and we can see what the default grid looks like with our customer information. And we also have the form here created that we see. So we have the customer's grid as well as the form, and within the grid we see here also that we have the add new button as well as the edit detail functionality automatically added. Okay, so with that we have a very basic setup going, and we don't really need much else for what we are wanting to do today. So the next thing I want to take a look at is up here within our main menu and tools, and there we have here the external libraries as well as the internal libraries. Okay, so I'm going to also go ahead and open the form before I go into the internal library. So I'm going to have both of these applications open, and when I come here now to tools and internal libraries, it will open the internal libraries in a new tab, and it will present me here with a drop-down menu. Now for Scriptcases, the Scriptcase internal libraries, we only have this one here. It's just there as a demo basically, so you can view it, and you can also check here the rename, so you can rename the file, which really is nothing. But the idea is really just for you to see how you create the internal library files. So basically you all start off with a class or even a function, and you basically want to be able to call from your application to your library and say, hey, this is what I want to do. So if I use the drop down here, and within the drop down here, so I'm going to change from Scriptcase to public, and within public I'm going to have loads. And if you have downloaded any of the projects that I've pretty much placed online with Scriptcase, then of course you will see here that you will more than likely have a load of these also, so they will be available for you. So you can check these, and again you have the view option, you have the rename option, the delete option, so if you don't want them you can just delete them, and you also have the edit option. So the view and edit are two different features, so do check that out. So on the view I can only view it, I cannot actually edit anything, but then if I click the edit button I can then go ahead and start adding extra code to my new library, my new internal library. Okay, so for public, we may want to have them available for anybody that uses your version or your copy of Scriptcase. You also have then project, which is then dedicated to the project that you are working on, as well as user, which are then specific libraries that you are to your name. So this is pretty much a fresh copy of Scriptcase that I have here. So I've only got these free from a project that I previously just imported. So if I'm going to go ahead and choose project, and from here I will then also choose new, and with that it will then create a new library file for me as an internal library within Scriptcase. So now if I come here and I give this a demo name, so I'm going to call this demo boot, and I'm going to call this bootstrap. Well, in fact we'll come back to that one because that's actually the second we want to do. So I'll call this one demo script. Okay, and just demo script, and I'll save that, and then that is just like so available already for me within my application. So I will not see them within my app now if I go there, but we'll check that out in a moment. So for now we have here first of all our library file that we're actually going to create. So here I can start off creating a function first of all, and with that function I could then also pass variables and so forth, and I want to give that function a name and so much more. So there also depends on, of course, how you or what you are creating for and so forth. So in this case, I want to create a function that is going to hide a field for me. So I'm just going to call it a hide field. Okay, and that function will now be called within my application whenever I call hide field. So now I can also go ahead then and use macros within these internal libraries. So what I'm going to do is, if I start off with an if function first of all, and I say if, and I want to then go company. I think do we have a company? Let's see, let's double check our fields here first of all. So we have, in our form, we have all of the fields. We should have already edited the form options, but we have all the form fields here. So that's actually going to work us quite well. So if I go with country, yeah, let's go with country. So if country and was it country name? Just country. Okay, so great. So if country, and then we want to say if country equals, and any, well, what countries do we have in the list? We probably have Germany, but we have to check out, of course, how the field is actually going to handle that, whether it's actually going to like this value or whether it's via an ID. So that's something we'll have to check out. And of course, then we would then formulate our function, and then we can say if, say, this field is available. So we need an extra bracket here. If country equals Germany, then, so here we're going to say display the field or fields, and then we need to open and close, and then within this we can then start to use our macro. So here, for instance, we can use the SE field, and I've got my caps lock on there, SE field and underscore display it would be, and then we want to hide, say for instance we want to hide one of our fields here. So if I come back into our form, and if I hide here the contact name, so field display, and we need our curly brackets there still, contact name, and then we want to lowercase that, and we have then here a comma, and then let's not forget those, off. Okay, so here we are going to say if the country is Germany for the user, then we will switch the contact name off. Otherwise, let's add an else statement also. So else, and then in this case, well, let's leave the comment because we can do anything with that afterwards. And here, if else, SC field display again, and then we want contact name. So let's paste that in there. Contact name, comma, on. Okay, so with that, then we have a very basic function available within this library or internal library that we have created. And of course, we could expand that further to not only hide a field or use this individual macro, but we could add, for instance, within this one demo script library, we could add, of course, many alternative functions. So that, for instance, within our form, we have then down here the application. So we have here, so then within our form, we have then down here programming, and there we have then our internal libraries. And within the internal libraries, we can already see that all of those public internal libraries that we have available, as well as here the internal library demo script that I have just created. So on the page refresh, it's actually scanned that and displayed that. So now if I just check that box and then apply the library wherever I want to use it on a specific event, for instance, then it will become available. So just like that, I create within one file, and then I can then simply apply that within here on my form. So here on load, for instance, and here then I could then, for instance, call hide field and run that. And then of course we have our form application, and for country we have DE. So let's go ahead and modify here our internal library from Germany to DE. Save that again. Go ahead and run our form customers once more. And this time here, the contact name is actually been removed. We have our contact title, and if I go forward, now we have our contact name back again. And if I go back, and our user here is from Germany, the contact name is removed. So just like that, we are able to add internal libraries as well as use the macros available within Scriptcase with a few clicks and add them within our applications. Okay, so then the next library that we had was then also the external library. So for the external libraries, opening the external libraries, again, by importing one of our projects, you will see you will have more than likely a load of these, and you can actually just, of course, use them, edit them, save them, and change them, or even use them within your own projects. And you'll see there's options or examples there on how to use the TCPDF library, webcam, as well as many other options there. So in this case, we can just go ahead and create a new library. And just as previous, we have the public and project. And in this case, again, I'll choose the project option, and let's call it here sample boot, and go create. And I'll scroll back down again. We have then our project and sample boot. Now, to use this library within the project I am working, I need to choose here use the library option. So use library. Once I check that or click that, it will indicate that I have the option to remove the library now. And I can do that with any of these libraries that we have available. And do note, you can also save the library as a new library, rename it, edit it, and so forth. So if I go ahead and click the edit button, I can then go ahead and edit the external library, and you'll see that I have here like a folder manager available, and I have nothing here yet. So I'm going to go ahead and click upload, and let me just go ahead and find that download. Okay, and I'll just drag and drop that here into the file manager, and then go OK. And then it will add, or well, basically extract the files from the compressed file. So here we have then two folders. Within that zip file, you'll find the JavaScript folder as well as the CSS folder. So if you extract the same files or the same zip file to your desktop, you will also have these same two folders available. So with that, then we are able to use the external library. So if I go ahead and close that and then scroll back down again, we have here our sample boot. I can edit that again, and just like that, we will have our folders still available there for us to use within our project. So for the Bootstrap, we have here the CSS folder as well as then the JS folder, and we'll have then the CSS file. So if I click on the folder, so I click twice then, so if I go back, if I click once, it will then navigate into the folder, but because I clicked twice, it also then opened up the CSS file here. And as you see, you are able to also edit those files within the file editor, or should I say the file manager. So I can edit that. I can also change here the theme of that. So if I don't like how it looks, I can change the theme of what it looks like on my screen. I can save the document. I can also cancel that or whatever I please. So I have here also an edit button, a delete button to manage the files. I can also navigate back and forth just by clicking the folders. And of course we have further options here to create new directories, new files, so that I can create new JavaScript or PHP or even CSS files within the file editor, and then just paste anything I have previously prepared or even code directly within Scriptcase. So now with the external library ready, I can go ahead and close that, and then within my so let's access the grid this time, and to access the libraries within the grid application, it's also here within the internal libraries, just so that's noted. It's identical to the form as well as some of the other applications within Scriptcase. Okay, so to use the external libraries, I need to actually use them directly then within the script. So if I come here on header, for instance, and then here I'm just going to copy and paste this time, and I have here basically the URLs or the links that are required for our well, to use our libraries, of course. So then I want to open it. Well, I need to close this first of all, so, and then I need to open that again. And of course I had then the PHP the wrong way around, so question mark PHP. Okay, so as I say, we have then here which we are using standard CSS or HTML within this document. So we're calling the CSS style sheet as well as the JavaScript file from our external libraries, and we're doing that here with our two macros. So we have here the PHP. So we're opening and closing our PHP statement again. And then within that, we are saying echo and use here the scurl library macro. And then we are targeting here the project, the demo folder, and then demo bootstrap -5/CSS. So we need to adjust that, of course, because I had that prepared for an alternative. And in this case, so if I go ahead now here within our internal library or external libraries, and of course we're not using that now, so I need to use that and save the project library so that I can now use this library within here. And of course I also want to edit the files so that I can just double check here the file structure. So it goes straight into CSS.js, and we called our project or our library sample boot. Okay, so we're here within the grid. We want to change here prj for project, and we have then sample boot, and change that here also sample boot, and then here we have straight in the CSS folder, and here it will also be then straight into the JS folder. Okay, so if I go ahead and save that and then run the grid application, you can see straight away that we have some changes within the theme, and that is because of Bootstrap. Now generally you will want to change here the buttons text again back to white, as well as make some other adjustments within the theme for sure, but that is entirely down to you. So if I go ahead and say if I remove this again, I'm just going to copy and paste it back there again in a moment and run that again, just so you have a little reminder again of what it looked like before. So there we have previous, and now by adding Bootstrap into that, you'll see that we automatically have some changes within then our grid application. Okay, so next up we actually want to use our external library now within our internal library, so that we can, pick and choose a lot more, as well as have it also available within an internal library. It is also the case in many situations where it is something you will want to actually apply. So using the two libraries together, so the external library where you then upload all your files, you will then want to code your project within your internal library, have use of the Scriptcase macros, because that is of course a massive time saver within your project development, and using the internal libraries will give you that advantage. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create then a new internal library, and this time I'll call it demo boot, which you may have guessed of course, and then I will save that. Okay, so then we have here then basically our little PHP statement here, and we are of course going to start off with a function, and if I call it then add boot, and then we have our brackets, and then we can go ahead and add our statement in here. So what I want to do first of all is here, I want to close here the PHP, and then I want to go ahead and open it up again. And then we can actually just jump here into our grid and just copy here the little bit of script there that I pasted there, and let's clean that up a little. Right, so, and then just like that, we can actually use our external libraries within our internal libraries. Now, each of these macros does have its own purpose, and of course it is very important to check those out, and for that of course we have our help system within Scriptcase. So do click here the help button, and then just read here the manual, come here to macros, because this is one of the most important aspects of your development within Scriptcase, is using the macros, because they are just gold dust to you. So do use these, and of course by using that you can actually just check here. So if I go ahead and search, so we are using for instance here the sc_url_ library. So if I search for that, then I can find that. So then let's go ahead and open that one, And then with that, we can check out exactly how we should actually use that. And we can see that we can import our CSS files or JavaScript files by using this macro. And we also have the parameters and how we should use each of these macros that are available. And if you don't know anything about the macros, do check them out. There's a long list of them. And as I said, they are like gold dust. They will save you a great deal of time. And some of them really open up the full potential of Scriptcase. So do check them out. So before we do finish up, I think it's quite important to highlight some of the other features within Scriptcase that are related to libraries, because for me, really, even the application language or data dictionary functionality there is also a library in itself, but that is of course something we will target in another video. So for now, if we wanted to use our internal libraries or external libraries within our entire project, then it's important to highlight the fact that we can also apply those within our default values. So if I come here to our default values, and that is again the project menu icon or the project menu option here, and there we have then our default values, and here we can pre-configure each of our applications before we actually start to code and develop them. So generally when I start off creating, for instance, or a grid application or form application for a new project, I generally like to know, what kind of width are they going to have? Where am I going to place the toolbar buttons? What kind of templates am I going to use? Am I going to display error messages? What kind of options am I going to use? And we have a lot of these already available here for the default values. And that will then apply those automatically to each of those applications when we generate them. And that is also And then with that, we also have then the internal libraries, where we then have, for instance, now here the demo boot, as well as the demo script that I have that just created a few moments ago. So if I check both of those and then click here the update button, and now if I then go ahead and create a new application, and say this time if I choose, right, let's create another grid application, and this time let's just go with the country table and click create. Now generating a form as well at the same time, and now I have the grid customers as well as a form, and the grid country as well as the form to go with that, also all linked up. So let's go ahead and open up the form application also. So we have here the form country, so they've both been generated. And if I look here into the application, application programming and internal libraries, and scroll down, you'll see that both of the internal libraries are already checked, and that will also be the same here within the grid country. So scrolling down here, we can see then we have here the demo boot and also the demo script, and both of those are checked already, so both are already enabled within my application. So all I now need to do is choose that event where I am wanting to use that library, and then in this case on header, and it was then demo boot, I believe it was. And if it wasn't, then of course if I go ahead and run this, so this is also one of the great things of the libraries, if there's an error, Scriptcase will tell you that there is an error. And of course in this case it's undefined, it doesn't know what demo boot is, because of course I just forgot the name of what I called it previously, and well, it's no longer there. So we had applied that here within our form customers, I believe, on load. So we have here the hide field. Oh, we hadn't actually applied it like so. Okay, so only within our internal library, we just called it add boot. So grid country, add boot, and then I can run that. And now the error message will be gone. So let's wait for that to open up again. And now the error message will be gone, and our library will be included. So if any of your libraries are not functioning, or if there's an error message, or if the function isn't available, then of course Scriptcase will let you know. Now of course you will not receive an error message if you do not actually go to use them. So I am calling here the library that I have available here in the internal libraries, and that is then adding it. So otherwise they're only attached to this application, they're not actually being used yet, unless I call that library to actually be used within this application. And that can be then the form as well as in the grid application. So within the default values, just by checking one of the, or any of your library boxes, of course I can change then the level here also, project, Scriptcase and public, and I can check any of those also, and then they will be added automatically to any of the new applications that I create. So this would be maybe one of the first things you do when you actually create your project. And then with your default values set for your applications that you are generating, you can then carry on. And of course, don't forget that it is important to check out the macros within the Scriptcase help documentation. If you've never used them before, do please check them. You'll love them. Okay, so for libraries, of course, that is pretty much it for today. We will continue on with next month. So if you are downloading this project, great, keep hold of it for next month, because I will continue with this same project next month. And of course, you know, when we have this grid application, when I run this grid application and it looks like this, then of course we need to do something about that. And next month's topic is, or happens to be, theming or actually styling your Scriptcase applications. So I will be showing you a few alternatives than just using the standard tools that we have available within Scriptcase. We will be using those as well, because that is an important factor within the development, and of course it will save you a great deal of time. You don't want to spend hours messing around with fonts. Who wants to do that? Okay, so we want to concentrate on the real code and develop real life applications that actually do something for us. And to do that, we want to really concentrate on those areas. And for that, we have our internal and external libraries to once again save you a great deal of time and use those macros. So that is all for this month. I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching this Scriptcase video. And of course, if you're in this week's webinar or this month's webinar, then of course say hello. It's always good to have a chat, ask your questions. We will be discussing exactly this mini project that we started, because of course, as I mentioned, we will be continuing with it next month. So thank you very much for watching, and until next time.